Hollywood's golden age, shimmering lights, champagne dreams, and secrets buried deeper than the Walk of Fame. But what if I told you that some of the most beloved stars were forced into decisions that would haunt them for life, all for the sake of image, money, and control? Why did the studios care so much about what happened behind closed doors, and who paid the price? Get ready, because the truth behind these glamorous facades isn't just shocking, it'll make you question everything you thought you knew. Judy Garland. Picture Judy Garland in her Technicolor glory, Dorothy's pigtails bouncing down the yellow brick road, singing her heart out about somewhere over the rainbow. To audiences, she was pure innocence, the poster child of MGM's squeaky clean American dream. But here's the brutal reality. Judy's life was controlled down to the last calorie, pill, and private moment, and that control came with devastating consequences. Behind the magic of The Wizard of Oz was a regime worthy of a dystopian novel. MGM practically owned Judy. Her diet, her relationships, even her sleep were all micromanaged. Studio bosses dictated everything, and if you think that sounds extreme, wait until you hear what happened when Judy fell in love and tried to start a family. In the early 1940s, Judy married bandleader David Rose. For a brief moment, it seemed like she might actually get a shot at happiness. But when she became pregnant, MGM's reaction was anything but joyous. The studio's executives went into crisis mode. An unmarried, pregnant teen idol. Forget about it. They didn't care about Judy's hopes. They cared about ticket sales and a carefully crafted girl next door image. So the studio intervened in the most invasive, heartbreaking way possible. They forced her to have an abortion. Let that sink in. The world's most beloved child star, coerced into a decision that would haunt her forever, all to keep a billion-dollar fantasy alive. Judy was told point-blank that her career, her family's livelihood, and her entire future were at risk if she didn't comply. The people supposed to be guiding her career became puppeteers of her personal life. The emotional fallout? It was catastrophic. Judy's own words in later interviews said it all. They'd give us pills to keep us going, then pills to put us to sleep. The pressure was constant. That pressure fueled a lifelong battle with substance abuse, depression, and a desperate yearning for control over her own life. So the next time you hear "Over the Rainbow," remember, Hollywood's rainbows came at a price, and for Judy Garland, that price was paid in private agony behind closed studio doors. Who knew innocence could be manufactured, and at such a devastating cost? Jean Harlo. Platinum hair, magnetic gaze, and a smile that launched 1,000 daydreams. On screen, she was every bit the wild, untouchable, blonde bombshell that MGM wanted and made sure she would be. Off-screen, though, Harlo's life was a whirlwind of scandal, heartbreak, and an all-powerful studio that saw her more as a product than a person. Born Harleen Carpenter, Jean's rise was meteoric. By her 20s, she was the name on every movie marquee, burning up the box office with hits like Hell's Angels and Dinner at 8. Audiences couldn't get enough of her. But behind the camera, Harlo was living in a gilded cage, and the studio kept her locked in with golden handcuffs and iron rules. Harlo's second marriage, to producer Paul Byrne, should have been her happily ever after. Instead, it turned into a tabloid tornado. When Harlo became pregnant during their marriage, MGM's panic was instant and absolute. Motherhood, they argued, didn't fit the bombshell brand. A child would destroy the illusion. Would Jean be seen as sexy, mysterious, or even available if she was suddenly someone's mom? In classic Hollywood fashion, image mattered more than humanity. The decision wasn't hers to make. The studio's lawyers and PR machines swept in and made it clear. Jean Harlo was too valuable, too marketable, to be allowed a private life. She was pushed, some say ordered, into having an abortion. The emotional cost was enormous. Friends and confidants described a woman racked with guilt, caught between the life she wanted and the career she was imprisoned by. If that wasn't enough, Byrne's mysterious death only deepened the spiral. Tabloids swarmed, rumors spread, and Jean was left to navigate her grief and her trauma alone. MGM doubled down, putting her right back in front of the camera, brushing every personal tragedy under the nearest, thickest red carpet. Harlo's story is a crystal-clear window into the ruthless priorities of Hollywood's golden age. Image over individuality, profit over privacy, spectacle over soul. Her brief, explosive life stands as a testament to how quickly the system could chew you up, and how little regard it had for the hearts and choices of its stars. For Jean Harlo, the blonde bombshell label came with a hidden asterisk. All that glitters on screen can hide a world of heartbreak off it. And in her case, the cost of fame was paid in silence, secrecy, and a personal loss that the public never got to see. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was never one to back down from a fight. Not with studio heads, not with co-stars, not even with the legendary Jack Warner himself. With those fierce eyes and sharper wit, she bulldozed her way through Hollywood's boys' club and carved out a place as one of film's most respected and feared leading ladies. But for all her strength on screen, the real battle was being waged far from the limelight in the suffocating offices of Hollywood's power brokers. Early in her career, Davis was climbing fast. She was young, ambitious, and exactly what the studios wanted, until she wasn't. When Bette found herself pregnant during a high-profile relationship, the congratulatory cards didn't exactly start pouring in. Warner Brothers saw a problem, not a miracle. Motherhood, they insisted, would destroy the mysterious and dangerous edge that made Bette bankable. A child would turn her from a femme fatale into something far more threatening to the studio. A liability. The whispers turned to outright commands. Bette was told she'd lose roles, her reputation would nosedive, and her career would flatline if she didn't take care of it. In an industry where studio contracts might as well have been shackles, her choices were illusions. Reluctantly, under relentless pressure, Davis terminated her pregnancy, a private agony she could never make public. What did Hollywood get in return? The illusion of control. For Davis, the cost was emotional and profound. She once famously said, "I survived because I was tougher than everyone else." But that toughness was forged in fire, and every private loss, every secret heartbreak, only hardened her further. It wasn't just about talent or willpower. It was about enduring an industry that cared more about headlines than happiness. Davis never forgot the lesson. In old Hollywood, your body wasn't your own. The studio could dictate your scripts, your co-stars, and your most private decisions. It's the sort of power that looks a lot like tyranny, dressed up in glamour and glitz. Next time you see Bette Davis's signature steely stare, remember that toughness came at a price most people never see. Underneath the bravado was a woman who survived by playing by the studio's rules and paying a terrible, invisible toll. Lana Turner. If you ever needed proof that old Hollywood ran on double standards, look no further than Lana Turner. The original sweater girl, discovered while sipping a Coke at a soda fountain, became the definition of manufactured stardom. Her beauty, her drama, her heartbreak, all sold by MGM like a sparkling product on a shelf. But what those glossy magazine covers never showed was the agony Lana endured to keep that perfect image intact. Lana Turner's personal life was a soap opera in Technicolor. Tabloid-ready romances, high-profile scandals, and enough heartbreak to fill a dozen movie scripts. The juiciest chapter? Her affair with Tyrone Power in the 1940s ignited Hollywood's rumor mill and sent the MGM publicity machine into full lockdown. When Lana became pregnant, the stakes skyrocketed. An unwed pregnancy? For a starlet with an ironclad contract? The studios went into panic mode faster than you can say box office. MGM, never one to leave things to chance, put immense pressure on Lana to fix the situation. Even Power himself, fearful for his own reputation, pushed for the abortion. The choice was a mirage. There was never a real option. The only thing that mattered was preserving the illusion of perpetual desirability, the fantasy that Hollywood so greedily sold to the masses. It was a decision made in secret, in a clinic far from the cameras and the lights. The impact on Lana was lifelong. She would later admit to feeling torn apart by the contradiction of her public image and her private reality. Behind the perfectly coiffed hair and million-dollar smile, there was a woman haunted by a sacrifice made not for love or even survival, but for the commercial priorities of men in suits. The irony? All that emotional turmoil didn't shield her from gossip or scandal. In fact, it made her more of a target. The tabloids loved to speculate, never knowing the real heartbreak she carried. MGM just cared that the box office receipts kept rolling in, oblivious to the wounds they'd inflicted. So, the next time you see Lana Turner lighting up the silver screen, remember, behind every Hollywood it girl was a set of invisible strings, pulled tight by the studio, choking off real choice and real happiness. Sometimes, the most glamorous stars hid the darkest secrets because the show, as always, had to go on. Joan Crawford. Say Joan Crawford, and you conjure up images of iron-willed glamour, shoulder pads, arched eyebrows, and that Oscar-winning take-no-prisoners attitude. She was the ultimate star, outlasting the silent era, the rise of talkies, and 1,000 studio bosses. But even the most powerful woman in Hollywood couldn't outmaneuver a system determined to keep its leading ladies in line, no matter the cost. Crawford's ambition was legendary. She fought her way from chorus girl to A-list royalty, transforming herself over and over with steely discipline. But Hollywood's rules didn't bend for even its brightest stars. When Joan found herself pregnant during the height of her career, the studios saw a catastrophe in the making. In the world of gossip columnists and image-obsessed executives, a baby was more scandalous than any on-screen romance. It's widely reported, though never officially admitted by Crawford herself, for obvious reasons, that she was pressured into multiple abortions, each one a grim reminder that her body was considered public property. Studios like MGM wanted her to embody single, glamorous, and always available, not mother or family woman. Crawford's contracts were clear. Her life off-screen was just as carefully curated as her roles on-screen. What did this cost her? Everything and nothing, all at once. Joan famously adopted children later in life, a choice some say was driven by the heartbreak and guilt she carried from years of sacrificing her own desires for her career. Her daughter Christina's explosive memoir, Mommy Dearest, paints a portrait of a woman obsessed with control, maybe because it was the only thing she was ever allowed to have. Joan's story is a study in contradictions, the iron-fisted diva who, in private, was at the mercy of men with contracts and calculators, the tough-as-nails actress who, when it mattered most, wasn't given a choice. In Hollywood, power was always an illusion, one that could be snatched away in an instant if you broke the unspoken rules. So, when you remember Joan Crawford, remember the price she paid for her throne, a legacy built not just on ambition, but on impossible choices and secrets locked away tighter than any studio vault. Sometimes, being queen means surviving a kingdom that never truly lets you rule. Rita Hworth. Rita Hworth. Just say her name and you get Hollywood's answer to the word iconic. The siren of Gilda, a goddess in satin gloves, a global pinup who could make an entire generation lose their cool with a single toss of her hair. She was the fantasy, every man's dream, every studio's goldmine. But dreams can be a prison, and Rita knew that better than anyone. Off-screen, Rita was Margarita Carmen Cancino, complex, shy, and constantly running from the image Columbia Pictures crafted for her. Her personal life was tabloid gold, 5 marriages, affairs with princes and geniuses, and a heart that always seemed just out of reach. But when Rita became involved with director Orson Welles, something real seemed possible. She wanted a family, a chance to anchor herself in a world that only ever wanted her on display. But then came the news. Pregnant. A happy ending? Not in studio land. Columbia's tyrannical boss, Harry Cohn, had one iron rule: Nothing must distract from the love goddess illusion. A baby meant the end of fantasy, the end of sales, and, in his mind, the end of Rita's value. So, the pressure campaign began. Wells, himself torn between love and career, was no help. "It's for the best," they said. It wasn't Rita's choice to make. Columbia's grip was absolute, her future, her body, her happiness, all managed by a room full of men with contracts. Reluctantly, Rita agreed to an abortion, a decision that would shadow her for the rest of her life. Friends said she never got over it. She threw herself into her work, chasing perfection, always feeling like something was missing. The cost? It went deeper than the magazines ever reported. In later interviews, Rita's eyes would grow distant. "Every man I've known has fallen in love with Gilda and awakened with me," she famously quipped, as if to say, the fantasy is all that matters, not the woman underneath. For Rita Hworth, Hollywood was both playground and prison. She was worshipped by millions, but denied her most basic desires by a system built on illusion. The love goddess got applause, not empathy, and the world never knew the heartbreak hidden behind the spotlight. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, America's ultimate sex symbol, a legend in diamonds, a walking, talking paradox. She's the face on every college dorm poster, the voice in Happy Birthday, Mr. President, and the tragic, unbreakable spirit behind some of Hollywood's greatest films. But what most people forget is just how much of Marilyn's life was not her own. The blonde hair, the breathy voice, the playfully naive act, it was all meticulously engineered by studios that saw Marilyn as their greatest investment. Born Norma Jean Mortensen, Marilyn was a survivor long before she was a star. Her childhood was a carousel of foster homes, trauma, and loss. By the time she hit her stride in Hollywood, she knew that survival meant giving the studios exactly what they wanted. But what they wanted was impossible: eternal youth, unattainable beauty, and a life with no room for real emotion or real mistakes. So, when Marilyn became pregnant multiple times, according to biographers, the reaction was pure, cold calculation. The studio execs and the powerful men in her orbit, husbands, lovers, handlers, all agreed. Motherhood didn't fit the brand. A baby would spell disaster for the image of Hollywood's perfect bombshell. Monroe was pressured, cajoled, and even threatened to abort at least one pregnancy. In some cases, miscarriages spared the studio the trouble. But always, it was about control. Her body wasn't hers, it was a product. The impact was devastating. Marilyn's longing for family was no secret. She confided in close friends about the ache of loss, the desire for a child she could never keep. "Fame will go by," she once said, "and so long I've had you, fame. If it goes by, I've always known it was fickle." Underneath the glitter, Monroe was a woman in pain, fighting for agency in a world determined to deny it. The tabloids loved to dissect her love life, her breakdowns, and her beauty secrets. They never told the truth, that Marilyn's greatest heartbreaks were decided for her, behind closed doors, with her future hanging in the balance. She was a star, yes, but also a casualty, sacrificed at the altar of the Hollywood machine. For Marilyn Monroe, fame was both a blessing and a life sentence. The world remembers her laugh, her smile, her iconic walk, but the real story? It's what they made her give up, and how little choice she really had. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge, the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, the glamorous star of Carmen Jones, the woman who broke Hollywood's color line with sheer talent and unstoppable charisma. But Dorothy's legacy isn't just about barrier-breaking roles and standing ovations. It's also about the staggering price she paid for daring to exist in a world that never wanted her to win. Dorothy's rise was nothing short of revolutionary. She fought for every opportunity, bulldozed through prejudice, and demanded respect in an industry that treated her as an exotic novelty at best and a threat at worst. Her beauty and poise masked the relentless stress of navigating a Hollywood that policed every move, every rumor, every mistake. And when Dorothy found herself pregnant, the stakes were multiplied by 1,000. For white actresses, motherhood was a problem. For a black star with everything to lose, it was a career-ending catastrophe. Managers, agents, and studio fixers all closed ranks. An unwed pregnancy would ruin everything. Dandridge was pressured, bullied, and emotionally cornered until the only way out was to agree to an abortion. Her body, her hopes, her future sacrificed on the altar of Hollywood's cruel calculus. Dorothy's heartbreak didn't end there. She desperately wanted a family and later gave birth to a daughter, Marilyn, who was born with severe disabilities. Studio executives and agents urged her to hide the child, fearing bad publicity. Dandridge, always dignified, refused to be shamed, but the emotional scars were permanent. The industry that celebrated her on stage and screen gave her no grace in private. Even at the height of her fame, Dandridge was isolated. She had to be twice as good, twice as careful, and twice as silent as her white peers. The secret of her forced abortion was just one of many wounds she endured to stay afloat in a sea of institutional hypocrisy. Today, Dorothy Dandridge is hailed as a pioneer, a woman who changed the game and paid the ultimate price. But behind the legend, there was a woman who never stopped fighting for the right to live, love, and choose, no matter how hard Hollywood tried to take those rights away. Ava Gardner. If there's a name that conjures up the wild, sensual side of classic Hollywood, it's Ava Gardner. She was the Southern siren who mesmerized both fans and fellow stars, Frank Sinatra, Mickey Rooney, Howard Hughes. But as glamorous as her love life seemed, the real drama was never in the headlines. It was in the back offices of MGM, where the studio's fixers pulled strings and called shots on every aspect of Ava's life, including her most private decisions. Ava was a rebel in red lipstick, with a laugh that could stop traffic and a temper that could clear a room, but even she was no match for the iron grip of Louis B. Mayer's MGM. When she found herself pregnant twice, during her years as one of the world's most photographed women, Ava didn't get to savor the news or plan for motherhood. Instead, she got a crash course in studio control. In her autobiography, Ava laid it bare. MGM's top brass told her point blank that a baby would spell doom for her career. "They didn't mince words," she wrote. "They said it would be the end of me." The men in charge were obsessed with preserving her as the ultimate unattainable fantasy. And that meant no stretch marks, no strollers, no hint of domesticity. Even Frank Sinatra, her tempestuous soulmate, was swept up in the studio's orbit. The pressure was overwhelming, and it worked. Twice, Ava terminated pregnancies to protect the brand that was, in reality, a gilded cage. The fallout was immense. She poured her pain into whirlwind romances, epic drinking sprees, and an ever-thinner boundary between Ava the legend and Ava the woman. Fans saw the fiery eyes and world-weary smile on screen. They never saw the private grief or the impossible choices behind them. Ava never sugar-coated her past. She told her story with characteristic honesty and a bitter kind of humor. "I have only one rule in acting: trust the director and give him heart and soul," she once said. Off-screen, she learned that in Hollywood, you had to give up your heart and soul just to survive. So the next time you watch Ava Gardner light up the screen, remember, her freedom, her wildness, her devil-may-care attitude, it all came at a price set by men who'd never have to make such sacrifices themselves. Tula Bankhead. Tula Bankhead didn't play by Hollywood's rules. She set her own. With a voice like whiskey and a wit sharper than a switchblade, she was the Southern tornado who tore through stage, screen, and polite society with the same disregard for convention. But even Tula, the original bad girl of Broadway and film, found herself cornered by the era's most unyielding force: studio control over women's bodies. Tula was notorious for her exploits, flirtations with everyone from leading men to socialites, wild parties that made Gatsby look tame, and a candor about her sexuality that sent censors into spasms. But in a world obsessed with the illusion of propriety, her freedom came with hidden costs. When she became pregnant, not once, but multiple times, the pressure from her management and the studios was immediate and intense. Tula herself never shied away from the truth. In interviews and memoirs, she admitted to undergoing several abortions, describing them not as scandals, but as sad necessities in an industry where motherhood meant career suicide. "I can't afford to have a baby," she once quipped, "because I'd have to give up at least 3 lovers and a bottle of gin." But the real story was no laughing matter. Behind the bravado was a woman pushed into impossible corners, forced to choose between her independence and her livelihood. Studios wanted Tallulah as the wild card, the unpredictable devil-may-care starlet who could fill theaters and newspapers with gossip. But they had no interest in the reality of her life. A baby, to the studio system, wasn't a blessing, it was a threat. Every time Tallulah faced the choice, she was reminded of how little power even the most powerful women truly had. Bankhead's resilience was legendary, but it came with scars. She was a rebel, yes, but even rebels are subject to the rules of the game. Her candidness about her abortions made her an outlier, but it also exposed just how universal and how tragic these open secrets were in Golden Age Hollywood. Remember Tallulah, not just for her punchlines or her parties, but for the way she lived on her own terms, even when those terms came at a cost most people never imagined. So, the next time you marvel at old Hollywood's glitz, ask yourself, what did it really cost to keep those stars shining? These stories aren't just footnotes. They're the hidden heartaches that powered an empire built on dreams and secrets. Whose story surprised you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like, share, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood truths. Because in this town, the biggest scandals were never in the headlines. They were right behind the studio gates,